This video is going to be all about the Insta360 Flow 2 Pro smartphone gimbal, but not just the technical stuff. I'm also going to talk about the creative aspect of using your gimbal. Hey there, my name is Simon Horrocks and I've been creating with film and video since I was 7 years old. But in the last 5 or 6 years, I've been using mostly smartphones and gimbals. And in my opinion, these are truly great tools that liberate us all as creators. Let me show you how to get the most cinematic video using this device. And of course, I'm going to go through all the controls and all the different functions that you can get with this gimbal. For this video, I'm going to be using an iPhone 16 Pro, but you do need to be aware that you're going to find a number of these features are not available for Android users. Before you can start, you're going to need to install the Insta360 app and activate your gimbal. The app will then notify you of any available firmware, so make sure that you do install that. I also recommend that you charge it fully as well using the USB-C port. Place the phone in the magnetic clamp with the clamp in the middle of the phone. The clamp has a little camera and arrow symbol, so that shows you which way round it should go. Camera's on this side. Place the clamp so that it aligns with the gimbal correctly. When you unfold the gimbal, it automatically powers on. But if you want to power on and off without folding and unfolding, you can just press and hold the bottom of the wheel. The Flow 2 Pro actually remembers if the phone was in portrait or landscape when you powered off, and it returns to that orientation when you power on again. And this gimbal is full of nice little touches like that. So if you see a red light here on the wheel, that means the clamp isn't correctly aligned. Now if you look closely at the mounting area, you can see this little red button. When the clamp is correctly aligned, the clamp presses down this red button, and that tells the gimbal that the clamp is in the correct position. So if you misalign it, it's not going to press down this button and you're going to get that red warning light. Okay, now you're ready to start shooting. Here's a quick tip. If you're out filming and you can't remember what a particular button does or how to activate a certain feature, there's a quick way to remind yourself. Open the settings in the Insta360 app by tapping the 3 dots in the bottom left corner. Now scroll down and then you're going to find these 3 headings. You've got a quick start guide, tutorial and button guide. So just tap the button guide and now you've got 4 pages that are going to remind you what all these buttons and the trigger and everything else does. NFC One Tap pairing on the Insta360 Flow 2 Pro is designed to make connecting your smartphone to the gimbal as fast and as effortless as possible. And this actually works for both iPhone and Android, but it does work slightly differently. For iPhone, you need to be running iOS 17 or later, and you also need an iPhone 12 or newer, and you need to turn on the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and now power on the Flow 2 Pro gimbal. Hold your phone so its NFC area touches the NFC tag on the Flow 2 Pro. And you're going to get a DockKit pairing pop-up on the screen, so just tap connect to complete pairing. After this initial pairing, you shouldn't need to use the NFC again. In theory, you should just be able to turn on the gimbal and your iPhone is going to auto-connect in the future. For Android, you need to make sure that it has NFC and it's enabled, as well as Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. Power on the Flow 2 Pro gimbal, hold your phone's NFC area close to the NFC tag again on the gimbal, and you should get a pop-up appearing, or the Insta360 app is just going to launch automatically, and then follow any on-screen prompts to complete the connection. Again, after the first pairing, in theory, your phone will auto-connect to the gimbal in the future without needing to repeat this procedure. The Flow 2 Pro has a quick start feature, and that allows you to get shooting a little bit faster. Now, if you're using a recent iPhone, as soon as you power on the gimbal, you get a notification prompting you to open the Insta360 app. So for this to work, you need to enable it in the Insta360 app, as well as allowing notifications for the app and location information in your iPhone. Tap the 3 dots to access general settings and make sure auto pop-up connection is enabled. Make sure your iPhone isn't in Do Not Disturb mode as well, because that's going to prevent notifications from any apps, including the Insta360 one. And now when you power on the gimbal with the phone attached, you're going to get this prompt, and you can just tap that to go directly to the Insta360 app. So it just saves you from having to hunt around in your phone looking for the app. The gimbal offers up to 10 hours of runtime on a full charge. To check your battery status, with the gimbal switched off, you can simply short press the power button once. The more indicator lights that you see on the smart wheel, the more charge you have. If you're connected to the Insta360 app, you're going to see the battery level displayed in the corner of the screen, as well as your phone's battery level. If your phone's battery is running low, the Flow 2 Pro can also double as an emergency power bank. Just connect your phone's charging cable to the USB-C port next to the magnetic phone clamp. With the gimbal powered on, its battery does need to be above 30% to charge your phone. But if the gimbal is powered off, you can use it to charge your phone until the battery of the gimbal runs out. All you do is just press the power button once to start charging. On the front of the gimbal, we have the record button. Press once to start and stop recording. And this works for any camera app, including your phone's native app. To change modes, press the M button, which is the 6 o'clock position on the wheel. And the current mode is indicated by the light on the wheel. So if the light is at the top, that is in auto mode. And this is a good general purpose mode, and it's a good mode for beginners as well. So this mode is basically follow mode, but with a slight twist, because in auto mode, the gimbal automatically adjusts its sensitivity based on your movement, depending on whether you're standing still, walking, or running. So I'd say that for ease of use, just use auto mode instead of the follow mode. If the light is on the right, the gimbal is now in follow mode. And this mode follows your pan and tilt movements, just like the auto mode does. So this is a good mode for general use, and it allows you to move and then tilt up and down as you're moving. If the light is at the 6 o'clock position, the gimbal is in pan follow mode. And that means the gimbal only follows your pan movements. So this is good for tracking shots, and as well, you can actually extend the handle and create a really cool crane shot. If the light is on the left, or the 9 o'clock position, the gimbal is in FPV mode, or first person view mode. In this mode, the gimbal follows all your movements. As well, when you turn the wheel, the camera spins so that you can shoot a barrel roll shot. So this is good for more creative shots where you want complete freedom to move the camera. It's kind of like taking your audience on a roller coaster ride. Now, if you double press the M button, you're going to go back to the previous mode. The joystick on the Insta360 Flow 2 Pro lets you manually control the direction of your camera. You can push it left or right to pan horizontally, or you can push it up and down to tilt the camera vertically. The joystick is actually touch sensitive, so this means that you can adjust the speed of movement by how much you push the joystick. Double press the trigger to instantly recenter the gimbal. Triple press to rotate the phone 180 degrees. So this allows you to switch from using, say, the selfie camera for filming yourself to switch to the rear cameras for filming yourself. If you press and hold the trigger, you will enter locked mode. And now none of the motors are going to respond to your movements. So this is useful for capturing shots where you're moving in a straight line, like a push in or a pull out, and you don't want your camera to pan left or right or tilt up and down. Pressing the trigger twice and then holding it will activate the Active Plus mode, and this means that the gimbal will react quicker to your movements. While using the Insta360 app, a single press on the trigger starts or stops subject tracking. And finally, if the gimbal is in standby mode, a single press on the trigger is going to wake up the gimbal. But what is standby mode? Well, it's just a mode that is designed to basically temporarily pause the gimbal's motors, and it's going to conserve battery without actually fully powering off the device. So to enter standby mode, just triple press the M button. To switch between portrait and landscape, just double press the switch button, which is on the wheel on the right. If you're using the Insta360 app, one press on this button is going to switch between the front and the rear cameras. So Apple DockKit works with various motorized stands for iPhones, and what it does is allow the camera's face detection to communicate with the motors of the stand, and it enables the device to track a person as they move around. And that's basically how it works with the Insta360 Flow 2 Pro. When you first get your device, switch it on, hold your phone close and wait for it to detect the DockKit device using the NFC communication. And once it's connected and using DockKit, you'll see the green light around the pan motor. And once the camera recognizes a face and starts tracking, this green light pulses while it's tracking. And the main advantage of using DockKit is that you don't need to download any special apps to use it. You can use your iPhone's regular camera app or any other iOS app that supports it. And that makes it more versatile than using the Insta360 app tracking. So it's a pretty handy feature if you're aiming to create professional looking videos, allowing creators to work within a familiar interface. So you can use it for all kinds of things, filming yourself with whatever your favorite app is, like the Blackmagic Camera App, for example, or filming other people and keeping them in the frame with the camera tracking them. And you can also use it for things like live streaming and video calls. As long as you have iOS 18 or later, and you're using the native camera app of the iPhone, it should now include the photo mode, as well as the cinematic mode and the slow motion mode. As well, if you're using DockKit on an iPhone 16 Pro or Pro Max, the Flow 2 Pro can track a subject or object and use frame rates up to 120 frames per second in the iPhone's native app. Or you can use a third-party app like Blackmagic. So there's this new mode called Free Tilt Mode, and that was introduced for the Flow 2 Pro. Extend the handle a bit, and then you just need to twist the pan motor 90 degrees. And just below the motor, you're going to see an arrow and the words on and off. So you just need to twist again until the arrow points to on. In the app, at the top, it's now going to say Free Tilt Mode, so the gimbal knows that you've switched to this mode. And this is going to open up a bunch of different types of shots. Firstly, a crane shot. We can extend the handle fully and switch to pan follow mode, and this means the gimbal isn't going to follow your tilt movement. Start recording and move the camera as smoothly as you can from low to high or high to low in a straight line up or down. And if you want to make this even smoother, you can think about switching to 60 or 120 frames per second if you have it, and then slowing it down to 30 or 24 frames per second. And you probably are better off using your native app for the 120 frames per second because the Insta360 app limits you to 1080p for that frame rate. You can also shoot a very smooth tilt shot. Place the gimbal on a flat surface and then hold it down, press record, and then use the joystick to tilt up and down. You will need to hold it because the gimbal actually falls over when the arm is bent over for free tilt mode. So like I say, the joystick is touch sensitive, so if you press a little bit more lightly, the gimbal is going to move slower. And you can also try a similar shot, but this time moving forwards or backwards at the same time. Again, I would suggest that you use 60 or 120 frames per second for slow motion to make the shot even smoother. And to get out of this mode, all you need to do is turn the arrow on the selfie stick to off first, and then return the hinge to the normal position. Otherwise, the hinge might not be in the correct place when you retract the selfie stick. Now, if you have a second smartphone, you can actually use it as a remote control for the gimbal. And as well, you can use it for framing. So this is pretty useful for solo filmmaking when you want to use the rear cameras and you can't see yourself in the frame. So you do need to have a Wi-Fi connection to use this. In the Insta360 app, tap the remote button. It now gives you a QR code which you can scan with your second phone. Tap the address and this takes you to a preview. And now you can control the joystick, you can use the record button or shutter button, you can start tracking, and you can switch cameras. As well, you can enable active zoom tracking and also auto zoom, which we'll get to a bit later in the video. The Insta360 Flow now has integration with the Blackmagic Camera App so that you can use the zoom wheel to zoom in and out. And you can also use the switch button to flip between front and rear cameras. But to do this, you do need the latest version of the Blackmagic app, so just make sure it's updated. When you're using the Insta360 app with the Flow 2 Pro, you can use the new AI-powered Deep Track 4. There's also 4 additional tracking modes: Tracking Plus, Active Zoom Tracking, Pro Framing Grid, and Auto Zoom. And these are all pretty cool features, but there's a little bit of a learning curve. So let's go through it. First, to use them, you need to start tracking. Once you start tracking, these buttons are now going to appear bottom left. If you're tracking a person, you're going to get all 4 of these buttons. But if you're tracking something else, then you're only going to get the top 3. And that's because to use auto zoom, you need to be tracking a person. So you can start and stop tracking by tapping the trigger once. But personally, I find drawing a box over the subject is the most accurate and sort of reliable way to start tracking. Tracking Plus mode is designed to deliver the most stable and most reliable subject tracking. But to use this mode, the Flow 2 Pro must be placed on a tripod rather than handheld. When you're activating Tracking Plus, the gimbal actually uses a wider field of view and it disables the electronic stabilization. And that allows the tracking algorithm to work more efficiently and more accurately. And this means that the gimbal can follow your movements more smoothly, and it's less likely to lose track of the subject even if you move quickly or unpredictably. And this is particularly useful for scenarios like recording yourself while presenting, filming sports, or capturing other kinds of performances where you want to set the gimbal down and then just let it do all the work. Another benefit is that Tracking Plus can be used in combination with active zoom tracking and auto zoom. Not all three together, either active zoom tracking or auto zoom. So you can track a subject even at high zoom levels and over long distances, and you're going to get this stable framing. And to get this Tracking Plus working, all you have to do is tap the button here to enable it, and then tap again to disable it. Active zoom tracking allows you to track a subject while you're zoomed in up to 15 times. The gimbal is then going to try to keep your subject in the center of the frame. So what I found is that the easiest way to do this is to start tracking by drawing a box with your finger, and then you can zoom in and out and it should keep track. But you can actually track objects up to 15 times zoom without using this mode. Just zoom in, draw a box to start tracking. But if you enable the active zoom tracking, in theory, this mode is better at maintaining the track when zoomed in. So the downside of this feature is that it's limited to 1080p resolution. And if you zoom in 15 times at 1080p, you will get a more noticeable loss of quality. So you're going to need to weigh up what is most important, image quality or tracking quality. If it's tracking quality, then tap the active zoom tracking button. And the final option here is called auto zoom. And if you turn that on, the Insta360 app is going to automatically adjust the zoom based on how far away your subject is. So if you're running around and sort of moving further away and then near again, the app is going to try to keep that person framed correctly and zoom in as they run further away and then zoom out as they get closer. So that's pretty handy if you're filming something that's moving around a lot. So the Pro Framing Grid allows you to reposition your subject according to the Golden Ratio Framing Guide. And using it is actually pretty simple. So first you need to start tracking, and then you can tap the Pro Framing Grid button. And now you're going to get these 9 composition points. If you tap on any of these points, the app is going to automatically adjust the shot to move your subject into that new position. If you're filming yourself with a selfie camera, you might want to tap the top middle point to place your face nearer the top of the frame. And this might be useful if you're using your hands to demonstrate something. When filming a walking subject, cinematographers often position the person on one side of the frame. And this leaves open space on the other side. So this creates what's known as active space for the subject to move into. And using this Pro Framing Grid, we can do that really easily. The Insta360 Flow 2 Pro has another tracking feature called multi-person tracking. So instead of just focusing on one person, it can treat a number of people as a single group and then keep them all in the center of the frame. So let's say you're taking selfies or vlogging with a couple of friends. And sometimes someone is going to end up half out of the shot. Well, this feature tries to keep everyone nicely framed and centered the whole time. But it's not just for selfies, because if you're filming something like a dance group, a band performance, or maybe a cheerleading routine, something where there's a group of people, you can use this to keep everyone centered in the frame. And this is going to help you to get well-balanced shots for the entire performance. And this feature is going to work with both the front and the rear cameras, so you've got options depending on what you're filming. When you're setting up, make sure you can see all the faces of the people that you want to track in the frame. Try to keep the background free of random people who might confuse the tracker. Draw a box around all the people that you want to track. The app will show you who it's tracking, and the main person is focusing on is going to have this green box around them, and everyone else is going to have white boxes. And if your group splits up or moves in different directions, the gimbal is going to prioritize the person with the green box, and it's going to keep them in the center. You can actually change who the gimbal tracks as the main person by swiping on the smart wheel left and right. Bear in mind, you can't use multi-person tracking at the same time as active zoom tracking, so it's one or the other, not both. Like the Flow Pro, the Flow 2 Pro has 360-degree tracking, which means that you can track all the way around and you'll never be out of shot. It'll just keep going and it'll keep tracking. So this feature is super handy in all kinds of situations. Say you're trying to capture a beautiful landscape and you can just keep panning around smoothly without any stopping points. Or if you're filming someone who's moving around a lot, the gimbal is going to be able to keep up no matter where they go. So for example, if you're doing a vlog where you're walking and talking, as well you can use it for live streaming while you're on the move, and you can show your viewers everything around you without any awkward pauses or having to fiddle around with the gimbal. The Flow 2 Pro has a new feature called Person Re-Identification. Basically, once you select a person that you want to track, the gimbal kind of remembers what they look like. And that means that even if they disappear from view for a bit, as soon as that person pops back into view, it's going to pick them up and start tracking again. And this means that you don't have to keep selecting the person that you want to track over and over again. Just pick them once at the start and the gimbal is going to keep its eyes on them throughout the whole recording. So this AI tracker is a small accessory which attaches to your gimbal, and like with DockKit, it brings subject tracking to any app. The difference is that this works with Android devices as well. The AI tracker uses its own camera and not your phone's camera for tracking you, and it can even track pets as well. So this unit allows you to record with your favorite third-party camera app. You can live stream, you can make video calls, and the gimbal is going to try to keep you perfectly framed as you move around. Connect the AI tracker to your gimbal using the USB-C port in the roll motor. Power on the gimbal and the tracker automatically turns on, and the indicator light is going to glow red to show that it's active. And by the way, if you ever need to turn the tracker on or off, there's a dedicated power button on the side. The AI tracker supports two main gesture controls. To start or stop tracking, simply show your open palm to the tracker's camera. For starting or stopping recording, you can use the peace sign gesture, which is, two fingers raised. Of course, that will also take a photo if you're in photo mode. There's also two buttons on the tracker for controlling the built-in fill light. To turn the light on, just long press either button. With the tracker mounted at the bottom, the left button lets you cycle through 3 levels of brightness, while the button on the right switches between 3 different color temperatures. And when you're done and you want to turn the light off, simply long press one of those buttons again. Sometimes it's a bit tricky to frame yourself when you're using the rear camera for a selfie, isn't it? To help with this, Insta360 have added this small convex mirror on the back of the roll motor. Convex just means it's slightly curved outwards. So this gives you a wider view than a flat mirror would. So when you're trying to take a selfie with the rear camera, either a photo or a video, because the rear camera does give you a better quality usually, you can use this mirror to see yourself. So you can't exactly see how you're framed, but it does give you a rough idea. And also I found that the more I used it, the more I got used to using the mirror to position myself. So if we want to change shooting modes in the Insta360 app, we just need to swipe on the screen to switch between modes like photo, video, time-lapse, TimeShift, slow motion, and so on. You can actually switch between photo and video mode by pressing the switch button 3 times. Another way to cycle through app modes is to swipe on the smart wheel. So you can swipe clockwise or counterclockwise to move between them. In video mode, you can change the frame rate and resolution. Just tap the settings box on the left. The options you get here are going to depend on your device. So this is an iPhone 16 Pro and I have up to 4K resolution and up to 60 frames per second here. If I want to shoot 120 or 240 frames per second, I'm going to need to switch to slow motion mode. Now tap the settings again and you can see that I can only shoot at a maximum of 1080p resolution. But this phone can actually shoot 4K 120 frames per second in the native app. So I'm going to be better off switching to the native app if I want to shoot 120 frames per second. If you're in photo mode, pressing and holding on the shutter button is going to shoot in burst mode. So you can see that it just starts taking photos until you take your thumb off the button. If you want to shoot using manual exposure, just tap here where it says auto and then tap M for manual. And now you can adjust your shutter speed and your ISO manually. Tap below where it says WB for white balance, and you can choose a preset, or you can use custom to open the white balance slider control. If you tap the three dots, you'll open the general settings menu. Here you can flip the selfie camera depending on your preference. So this doesn't actually change how you see yourself, but the image that you get will be mirrored, which means the text looks back to front or the correct way round, and the text is going to read as normal, depending on which one you choose. So you can toggle on your iPhone's HDR feature here, otherwise known as Dolby Vision. But remember that Dolby Vision can only be viewed using monitors that support HDR video, for example, your iPhone. Now, if you get annoyed by the scene recognition popping up all the time, you can switch that off here. A bit further down, you can enable Apple ProRes and Apple Log if you're looking to spend time color grading your footage. And if you are interested in that side of video creation, then I do recommend that you use DaVinci Resolve for color work. It's pretty much the industry standard for colorists, and there is a pretty powerful free version as well. On the downside, there is a bit of a steep learning curve, and that's why over on Patreon, I've created a step-by-step course that's going to get you started with this excellent software. To preview any media, tap the gallery button, which is beside the record button. So here you can view, you can favorite, or you can delete media. So there's actually a whole bunch of gimbal controls which can be used to playback, cycle through, zoom in and out, and more. And I'm going to include all those in the text version of this tutorial. So if you just follow the link in the description, it's all laid out there for you, and you might find the text version useful anyway. So we've seen that the wheel around the control panel can be used for barrel roll shots. When connected to the app, we can also turn the wheel clockwise or anti-clockwise to zoom in and out. But if you want the best image quality, you probably should avoid zooming in too far digitally, otherwise you're going to lose some sharpness. You can also use the zoom wheel to switch between your phone's lenses. To do this, quickly turn the wheel all the way to the end and release, and it's going to jump to the next lens. For example, from wide to telephoto, rather than gradually zooming. If you want to use the zoom wheel for manual focus, open the app, tap the gimbal icon to access the flow settings, find the zoom wheel setting, and here you can switch the function from zoom to manual focus. Once you set it to focus, turning the wheel will smoothly shift your focus point. Now, unfortunately, this doesn't really allow you to perform focus pulls while recording, though the problem is that it's either on or off, so when you turn it, it just suddenly starts moving. So you can't really get a smooth movement, and it's also quite hard to control. The Insta360 app now has a teleprompter, but you do have to use the front selfie camera to use this feature. Tap the teleprompter button at the top of the screen and it opens this text box. Type your script and then copy and paste it in, or you can actually just type directly into the app. After you start recording, the text is automatically going to scroll at a set speed, or you can scroll it manually if you prefer by swiping around on the smart wheel.
So now I'm reading the text from the teleprompter, and you can actually change the position and the size of the text pretty easily. Using the screen, it's not possible to place the text exactly over the camera as you can with a dedicated teleprompter. So I'm not looking directly at the camera at the moment, but you can try to place the text box as near to the camera as possible on the screen, and hopefully it's close enough. And so if you find reading text helps you perform to the camera and you don't have time to set up a dedicated teleprompter, this feature should help you out.
If you find reading text helps you perform to the camera and you don't have time to set up a dedicated teleprompter, then this feature might help you out. So if you have an Apple Watch, you can actually use it as a remote control for the gimbal and your smartphone's camera. You can use it either with your iPhone's native camera app or with the Insta360 app, but they do actually function a little bit differently. So let me show you how. Firstly, you're going to need the Insta360 app installed on both your iPhone and your smartwatch. And then secondly, you need to enable Bluetooth on both the watch and the phone and ensure that they're paired. So what I've found is that all you need to do is open the camera app on your Apple Watch, and you should find that it opens it automatically on your iPhone at the same time. And if you set up DockKit on your iPhone, you're going to get extra controls when you're using the native app. So you now get a preview of your phone's camera, you get a record button, plus you get these arrows, and these act like a joystick. So you just drag up and down, left or right to move the gimbal. And of course, this preview obviously makes framing yourself easier if you're working solo. So the little wheel on your Apple Watch that Apple calls the digital crown, you can just turn that and you can zoom in and out. Tap the three dots to open a new menu of features. So first of all, we can choose between frame a subject or manual. Frame a subject uses DockKit to look for a human face and start tracking. But if you have it in manual, then you're going to use the joystick remote to control the gimbal movement yourself. If you have quick rotate enabled, then double tapping the left or right arrows rotates the gimbal 180 degrees. And below that, we have a control to switch between front and rear cameras. And finally, we can switch the flashlight on or off on the iPhone or just put it into auto. Okay, now let's try the Insta360 app. So just open it on the Apple Watch. And in this case, it does seem that you need to open the app manually on your iPhone. It doesn't open automatically like the native app does. So again, you get a preview of your phone's camera and a record button. To the left of the record button is the recenter button, and the button on the right just enables or disables active track. There aren't any joystick arrows here, but you can still drag up, down, left and right to move the gimbal. Just slide your finger from the center towards the direction that you want to move the gimbal. Again, we've got three dots, so tap those to open up a new menu of features. So here we can switch between landscape and portrait framing. And whatever you choose, you need to tap done for it to actually switch. And below we can switch between video and photo mode. And then finally, we have a timer, which we can set up to 10 seconds. So that's good for photos if you're moving into position and you need a little timer. If you have the MagSafe Mount accessory, it sticks to the back of your phone and then mounts as normal. So the advantage is that you don't have to worry about the clamp pressing buttons or obscuring the screen. And also it's probably a little bit quicker to mount. So just make sure that it's aligned correctly with the line here pointing towards the charging port. It has to be straight, because if this is even slightly out of position, then it does become less secure and the magnet doesn't have the same sticking power. And the MagSafe clamp also has this ring so that you can open it out and use it as a stand for your iPhone. Now, if you want to shoot a time lapse, you should either use the inbuilt tripod legs or mount it to some other kind of tripod. When you switch to time lapse, you get a bar at the top which contains the time lapse settings. On the left is the interval between frames. Middle is how long the app is going to film for and how long the final video is going to be. Just tap on the bar to expand. Swipe the interval duration setting to choose the frame rate. You can choose to shoot a frame every half a second, all the way up to 1 frame every minute. On the right, you're going to see the app gives you a little hint as you swipe, at least for the first few settings anyway. So I'm going to choose 1 second for this example. And below that, we can choose how long we want the app to record. What you choose here will depend on the interval. If you choose a long interval, like 30 or 60 seconds, then you're going to need to film for longer. I'm going to choose 10 minutes to go with my 1 second interval. At the top, you can see we now have 10 minutes on the left, and on the right, we have 20 seconds. And this just means that with these settings, we will end up with a 20-second time lapse. At the bottom, you can choose the type of time lapse that you want to create. Fixed angle just means that the camera isn't going to move. Left to right or right to left is going to rotate or pan the camera during the time lapse. And if we select custom here, we can create a movement between up to 4 different points. But unless you have a need for some kind of complicated movement, I would just stick to 2 points. Use the joystick to find the first frame, tap the plus, move to the final frame and then tap plus again. If you want to add more points, you can just keep moving and then tapping plus. Most of the time it is a good idea to lock exposure for a time lapse, but the only exception is probably filming a sunrise, because then it can be tricky to avoid overexposure as the sun comes up. So in that case, you might want to use auto exposure. And then just press the record button and let the gimbal do its thing. TimeShift is Insta360's version of hyperlapse, which is the same as a time lapse, except you're moving the camera by walking or some other method. Now, when you switch to this mode, you don't get any settings. You can just press record and start moving. The app is going to record a video and then it's going to speed it up after you've finished recording. At the bottom, you're going to see how long you've been recording on the left and how long the final video is going to be on the right. So when you open this video in the gallery, the Insta360 app is now going to start processing the video. And that means that it's just applying this speed change. Once it's finished, you can view, use, or share your hyperlapse. Hyperlapse videos can look pretty cool if you add some kind of motion blur, because it makes the motion within the frame a little bit more smoother and a bit more dynamic. Cars and people look more like they're kind of whooshing past. Now, to do this normally you would need a slow shutter speed. But if it's daylight, then most likely your shutter speed is going to be too fast. So the only option then is to add an ND filter, which will reduce the light and therefore reduce your shutter speed. But if you don't have an ND filter, or if that's just too complicated, you can also add motion blur in the Insta360 app. Go to the homepage, tap Create a Video, then select the video that you want to add motion blur to, and then tap Next. So you're going to be taken to the Insta360 in-app editing interface, and you can actually use this like a regular video editor, like CapCut, VN, or iMovie, in terms of basic trimming, filters, and so on. But at the bottom, you're going to find this feature called Motion ND. Tap that and then enable it, and then use the sliders to fine-tune the motion blur effect. Apart from regular pano photos, the Insta360 Flow allows you to take 360-degree photos as well. And that is actually one feature currently unique to this gimbal. But it is a little bit more complicated compared to other modes, because you can't just tap a button and off you go. First thing, you need to set your phone slightly differently. Put the gimbal in vertical mode and then switch it off. Make sure you are in pano photo mode and select the sphere option for a full 360-degree image. And for the highest quality, switch from HD to Super HD if your phone supports it. Now you need to turn the phone so that the screen is actually against the back of the clamp, so it's the other way around to how we normally have it. So then you just need to raise it a little bit so it's also higher in the clamp. Switch the gimbal back on, and then you're going to get this guide which lets you know where the clamp should be. Press the shutter button on the gimbal, and you're going to get this countdown, and then it starts taking photos. When it's finished, these photos are then stitched together to create a 360-degree photo. So you can swipe on the screen and you can look around this image. And once you have your 360-degree photo, you now have some choices about what to do with it. Now at the top, we can switch between animate and custom. In animate mode, you can choose one of the preset animations that you find at the bottom. Watch the animation and let's just see if you like it. Tap the screen to start and stop the animation. If you tap the edit button at the bottom, you open up a number of different choices. So for example, you can change the music. And if you choose snapshot, you can take a screenshot of the current frame, or you can save the full 360 image. What's this plate blur thing? Well, if you switch that on, it will detect vehicle number plates and then blur them out, to maintain the privacy of the vehicle owner. Color Plus adds contrast and saturation, so you can just use the slider to get the look you want. Tap the export button at the top to export the animation. So you can only export a 1080p video here, but you can adjust the bitrate if you want to. In custom mode, you can pinch on the screen to reframe, or you can tap the field of view button, bottom left, to open up the preset field of view options. And you can even use that popular tiny planet look here. If you choose dewarp, then it's going to remove all the lens distortion. And if you tap edit here, you're going to get similar settings as we saw before, except there's no music, obviously. Again, with export, you can export the current frame or the full 360-degree photo. An exported 360-degree photo is going to appear in your phone's gallery like a stretched out photo. And these photos can be shared to platforms that support 360-degree media. For example, Facebook. It's actually pretty simple to do. I'm using the desktop page here. Click Add Photo or Video, drag the file over, tap Edit, and now you can drag the photo around with the mouse to choose the starting image. And once it's uploaded, people can swipe this image to look around. So this is probably very useful for real estate listings, for example. So now that you've mastered your Insta360 Flow 2 Pro, you want to learn how to create something with a story in it, or maybe like sequences or a vlog. I've written, directed and produced a feature film and 2 web series that are on Amazon Prime. And I've put all that creative knowledge and storytelling craft into my step-by-step guides that are available on Patreon. So head over there if you're interested in that. You can actually join for free. We now have a 7-day free trial, so you can sign up, doesn't cost you anything. You can start doing the courses, and if you like them, you can continue. So head over there if you're interested. Other than that, see you in the next video.